hire Céline Sciamma.
Hey.
Get comfortable. I figure we'll just start. I've been really fortunate to have been stalking Céline for the last 7 months, so I'll keep it pretty generic, but I'd love to throw to you guys as well for some questions. Something I want to talk about, which we didn't talk about yesterday, so much of the physicality and what they do and how the characters portray themselves, and because so much is done without dialogue, there's so many different callbacks to certain moments. And one of my favorite is when in the beginning Marion discovers the painting is in the room, in the teaching room, and she's talking to her students, and that physicality of her with, you know, the hands, and she discovers that it's in there, and then at the very end, when she sees Eloise in the theater, it's the same sort of body language. What was the discussion like when talking about how they would sort of be reacting to certain things without actually speaking to it?
Yeah, that first scene is it's really weird to start a film with a scene with someone being so emotional about something you have no clue, and that she would. It was kind of a bet. It was kind of a leap of faith, having somebody getting really emotional about something, and being only not vocal about it, but just looking at little signs. And it's kind of the pact. Its first thing is kind of the pact that the film is making with you, that I am making with you. The first line of the film is, "Take the time to look at me," and then she says, "Look at my hand," and then her hands move. And so you know that you won't be disappointed if you decide to look. Something's going to happen. Maybe it's going to be something that's that small, but it contains a lot. And the discussion, for instance, this hand is written. And then we discuss with Noemi how strong she's going to do it. And this hand is a whole process that then, I mean, it's written, then it's shot with the right attitude and, you know, the right emotion. And then, for instance, during all the sound design of the film, I worked a lot on what that sound would be, so that you would hear it if you didn't look, so that it would make you look. So that sound is basically totally redone by, I always forget, how do you call the guy who does all the sounds?
The sound guy.
Yeah, but not the guy who edits it, the guy who makes it. You know, like when you make a film, Foley, yeah. Because that's, you recreate everything, which is a crazy moment that I adore. Because you have a guy, usually in shorts, that's gonna go, so you start your film, and it goes, okay, first scene, so he's gonna do every time they move, for instance. So he would be doing in all your scene. And then, for instance, to make like really beautiful noises of, you know, mouth, or we'll have a guy being like, it's crazy. Yeah. So this hand, so that, yeah, it's a good example of how you use sound for you to look, or you use dialogue for you to look, or how do you create, how do you give an audience the curiosity to look at an image and to be free, but also to be guided to look at things? I don't know if I'm answering to you.
Yeah, that's good. But you touched on the costumes, and it feels so much because they wear the same thing a lot, because there's only, you know, so many large dresses I think you can have. And what was it like going through the process of picking the costumes and kind of, you know, the textures, and particularly the green dress, and, you know, what was so special about that?
Yeah, the main idea was to have one costume per character, which would, I mean, depart from the idea of the really mundane period piece where you have all this fashion défilé of beautiful dresses that you would have read and that would have been in previous films. For instance, the cape that Adele Haenel has, cape is the right word. This is rented, for instance, so this might be in another film. I can't wait to see it in another film. I tried to buy it. I was like, I want to keep this. She looks really good in this. She should be wearing this all the time. So maybe it will be, I don't know. Who knows? But the good consequence of choosing to have like one costume per character is that you can craft it, design it, put a lot of ideas and also dedication to it. So we had this little workshop of like 5 women designing the costume in a little appartement in Paris, and that was beautiful to actually design this and try. Basically, most of the rehearsals we've done with the actors were about the costume. They would come and we would build this whole structure around them. Look how they would move, and choosing the fabrics, choosing heavy fabrics. For instance, for Marianne, it's very heavy fabric, cotton, linen, and for the green dress, that was the dress that was actually given a color since the script, because then the other colors they were choosing with the costume designer and being in the whole grammar and aesthetic of the film. But the green dress was something I had in mind, and that it's the most gorgeous and the most also, I mean, classical in a way. It's a model that is called Watteau. You see a lot in the painting at the time. It has this thing on the back, kind of a Ninja Turtle dress. I call them that all the time. And then you have to choose the right colors. You go through all those kind of fabric. I enjoyed this whole process very much. That's what I will be missing the most, going back to contemporary. Maybe I'll design jackets and track pants.
Because I think because they wear the same thing, you kind of lose sense of time. You kind of forget which day it is, and I think that you forget how immediate this love is. You know, the mother's only gone for so many days, and it's so urgent. You know, especially for the timing of the film, and when you sit and watch, you're sort of like, oh my God, when are they finally going to make out? Like, when is this going to happen for us? Because it does build, and you're like, oh, it's only been a couple days. Great, we have so much to go. But what was it like kind of timing it out? Did you have days in mind, or was it just filling the days? Because the portrait had to get done so many times. What was that sort of?
Well, it was a balance between the reality of what it is, making a portrait. I wasn't gonna respect that, and I wanted to be accurate, because it's also about an artist at work, and like, for instance, all the moment where she paints are actually kind of documentary. They're not edited. You're looking at the true rhythm of the painter, and so I wanted that true rhythm for the performance of making the portrait. So we're true to that, but also wanted this strong tension, very few days, but also that you would get lost, that it would be this very long thing. But mostly I wanted few days because I didn't want it to be elliptical. Elliptical? No. Ellipse? Is that word? It's when
that works.
I wanted you to feel that you would have shared every step of this. You're not missing out something, you know? When we go through the steps, I will remember you dozing off in the kitchen and everything. You're like, oh, and I missed something? But actually, no. So that you would be in the presence of this love this desire being born, and this love being built, that you wouldn't miss out anything. There's not even any cut scenes. All the scenes that were written and were shot, they are in the film. And crafting this rhythm is actually, well, believing in the fact that you can build tension, being patient and being careful, and not relying on conflict, for instance, or contrast, but even relying on rituals, because it's like the same room, and she's pausing, and she's watching, and even for me as a filmmaker, having the desire to stay in that room for so long and to revisit that figure of her posing was really a challenge. And in my previous film, I didn't do shot, reverse shot, very, very rarely. It was always about the whole character in the same frame. So there was a guy who was an extra on the sets, and that got hired. So he hadn't read the script. I don't like that. You know, usually everybody on the set has to be working around the same thing. So he hadn't read the script, and after the third day of shooting in the atelier, so in the main room, in the workshop of the painter, he was like, "What are we shooting tomorrow? Where are we shooting tomorrow?" We're like, "Oh, this room." He was like, "Again? Yeah, for 30 days." At some point we'll go outside and make a great fire, you know, but basically it's that room. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that guy was probably like, "Do I speak in this movie or no? Do I get to say anything?" No.
No.
You don't say anything.
You stay silent in the same room.
Yeah. Speaking of the fire, the bonfire scene is so layered. There's so much going on. The goal of it is for Sophie to find this woman and to sort of help with her situation, but then you do see this real connection between the two of them. But then on top of that, you have this beautiful chorus, this beautiful song happening. Was that all constructed in the same time when you were writing? Were you adding things to it? And then how did that song come to be?
No, yeah, it added up. I mean, at first I had in mind, when I came up with the title, pretty early in the process of writing, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I was like, I actually have to set that lady on fire. That's the ambition. It's not going to be a metaphor. It's not going to be like, ooh, she's on fire. Like, you know, like thinking the traditional cinema is setting on fire. No, we're going to make that image. So then, when you decided this, and like it's crazy because that image that was like really initial, and that was kind of a compass. You still have to make it happen, and in a good way, you know, not like, oh, I'm cooking now, oh, I'm on fire, yeah, what am I? So I had to craft a scene that would involve the fact that she would be set on fire, and that it would be like about passion, and also that it would be troubling, because in a way, it's also an image of death, because she's like on fire, and she's totally calm, and she's looking like she could, saying like, I could go all the way with this fire, which means consume myself for you, but also die. So there's a tension that is a sentimental, erotic, but also morbid. I wanted that image very badly, so how do you make that happen? So I was thinking, oh, okay, it's gonna be a very loving moment, and there will be a fire between them, and then I was like, oh, fire, witches. Group of women. Tell what witches really were. They were women hanging out, being like cool, having friendship, being autonomous, having knowledge, botanic, drugs, obstetrics, abortion. Oh, I have an abortion. Oh, you know, I'm giving you my process of thinking, which visually looks like that. For a very long time. But in my mind it's like the human brain algorithm. We invented that. And then thought, oh, this could be like some kind of climax, because okay, yeah, witches were just basically women hanging out and they wanted to burn that. But let's convoke that imaginary, and let's have a choir of women being strong together and accompany these women into loving each other. So then I had to do it. Had to craft a song and make it beautiful and make it the anthem for the film, and that's a whole other story. That's another question I can answer to it.
Talk about the song.
Okay.
And how that came, because you wrote it. You wrote that song.
I wrote that song. No, I didn't actually. I mean, I wrote the lyrics of that song with the help of an old white male. It happens sometimes. We can't help it. It's called culture, and past. Present also must be good. Called Nietzsche. And it's a quote from Nietzsche that I really liked. It it sounds pretentious, but it's actually the quote is really cute. It was kind of the thing I was engraving on, not engraving because I wasn't such a badass, like writing with a pencil on my desk. I would say, the higher we rise, the smaller we look to those who can fly. So that's the lyrics of the song. And then I wanted polyphonia, polyrhythmy. I didn't want any instrument, wanted them to feel like this one person singing. And it's the beauty of making cinema, you know, the beauty of making cinema is that you get to have access, sometimes being not very good at it, at very other arts, you know. You think about literature when you write the script, for instance, page 28 is definitely an idea that could be borrowed to the novel of the 19th century. You think about painting when you think about the image, because you're thinking about the frame and the direction of the light. You're asking yourself the question of the painter, and regarding the music, you get to ask yourself the question of the musician and the composer, and you find the answers in the talent of other people, and also the answers in the fact that this is all going to be cinema. So that's what we did with that song that came out actually quite quickly. It was like a 48-hour job, and then it was like mostly the amazing job of this beautiful choir of women that was recorded in a studio, because I wanted it not to be realistic. I wanted it to be able to play with it in this kind of rooms and like make it wide. But it was also performed live by the choir of women that actually did see in the film. And we could be able to mix that up a little bit.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, right, way back. Yes, you. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. First of all, that was exquisite. Speaking sort of on that, the use of music and score, I thought was really interesting. The fact that there really is not one, except for the two very pivotal moments in which it does matter incredibly. So, talk about a little bit more about the decision to not really use traditional score at all.
Yeah, that was a decision that I took very early on in the process of writing, because then you're going to write the film differently if you know that there won't be any music. And it was quite challenging because it's scary to make a love story without a score. And it's also scary to make not scary, but like unusual, to make a period piece without a score. But it was really, because it was a period piece, because I was talking about the past, that I really didn't want any music, because the character, I wanted you to be in the same position of the character of these women. Finding a book, you will read it 5 times. Hearing music, you have to go to church. They don't have access to art, fiction, beauty. We do very democratically today. That's the beauty of the contemporary. But they don't, and you're not going to get to our music if they don't, because I want you to share the experience. I want you to be equals with the character. And the movie tells about the influence of art in our life, the impact of art in our life, and also the impact of love on the relationship that we have to art. So it was also a way to create, not to be frustrating, but also to make you go through the actual impact of music in cinema, like missing it, forgetting about it even, and then it comes back and it's striking, because we get a lot of constant music in films, and it's like you don't even hear it anymore. Or myself, I keep hearing it all the time, and I'm like, like imagine if this would be silent. Imagine the room that it would be to hear, even the, I'm thinking you can hear the heartbeats of this character at some point. So that's why there was no music.
Well, I think too with music in films, especially when you think about even horror films, it's like, oh, get ready to be scared, or like, get ready to be sad. And I think in this film, we do have to go with our gut, because we're just watching them and we are following them. And that's why I think that bonfire scene is it changes everything. The first time I watched it, I felt like my heart was just racing, and I was like, oh shit, It's gonna happen now. Is there another one? Here.
Hi, so you made your first feature film at a very young age. Like, how did you manage to like raise money or like find a producer for your first feature film? Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Talking about financing your first film, finding a producer, kind of getting that process going on your first film.
Well, I come from a country that is very privileged regarding producing films and also, mostly also making first film. We are the country in the world, France. I come from France. You can tell with my great Chicago accent. We are the country that makes the most first feature film in the world. I think we make like 50 or 60 a year. Because like we have funding that is devoted to first film. So I'm really bad at giving advice on how to get things done here, because I'm basically ignorant about how it works. And but even though I come from a very privileged country regarding conducting cinema and discovering, scouting talent, I was also very privileged in that whole process, because I got to make my first film quite at a young age, and I had written it in film school. It got some attention, and I met a producer. I mean, basically with my diploma, you know, and got and we get this thing in France that we submit our script, whoever we are, wherever we come from, to people who are gonna read it and say like, if it's good, you can have money. I mean, you know, there's a ratio. Not everybody gets that, but you can go to these steps by having something that is yours and that has a vision, and somebody will say, well, okay. Also, I try to make my films cheap. That's an advice I can share with everybody in every country. But it's not about, I want people to be paid right, and I want the money to be on the screen. That's also, you know, sometimes all the films, sometimes they are very expensive but money is not on the screen. And on the screen, I'm sure you know a lot about these films. Yeah.
Nice.
I wouldn't know how to spend $100 million with just two people in a city.
You could make like 20 portraits.
20 portraits?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have like a jacket on. Well, yeah, obviously, but that.
One of the most beautiful things about the film, I find, is your use of close-ups and how you use that to show someone in a close-up looking at something often before we see that. And can you speak to your use of that and how also that kind of instills desire in the film as well?
Do I need to repeat that? That was pretty loud. Good? Yep. You good?
Yeah, the close-ups are about looking at somebody who's looking at somebody, and so it's not about. It's about sharing the intimacy of the look of somebody. So it's about sharing the intimacy of what she's looking at in a way, so what you don't see. So it's not about having an impact. It's not about being close to somebody's. It's not stepping into their space. You know, it's not like being too close. It's like being from the perspective. And to me, cinema is basically choreography of a face. Like how does a face enters a frame? Like how do you choose a character? What it's like to see a character's face for the first time? How do you make a permanent show of the face of somebody? For instance, the good example about that is how you discovered Heloise's face for the first time. You kind of create a narrative tension around that. She doesn't want to be seen. You also create an expectation, because at some point you're like, oh, I'm going to see her face because there's a frame of her, but then there's no face. And then you create a moment, a choreography around the fact that you know you're going to see that face, but when. And then you create this delay where you're first going to see the hair, so you're going to have more desire for that face, even though it's a face, Adele Haenel, the actress, she's not big here, but she's on the poster. No, we're not hiding a face. But how come? How do you create the tension for a face you know or you've seen? And that's this whole movement of her running. So you create a new tension that actually makes you forget about the tension of, oh, I'm seeing her face. You're like, oh, she's gonna die. Oh no, I'm actually gonna see her face. You know. So I tend to think a lot about that, and close-ups are part of that reflection, but mostly close-up for me are about the desire to see what she sees. So it's not about the desire to do it getting close to a character, it's about the desire to do it close to her own gaze. And most of my films are a bit like that, with one point of view, because it's one character watching the film, the others. It's not choral, you're never in the perspective of Eloise, for instance. But still, the leads are rarely the heroines in a way. Like even like in all my films, it's always like the second part that's kind of the leader, because it's not the one who's watching that has all the power. You know.
I've got one more. I want to go. Yes. You had so many cheerleaders that felt appropriate. No pressure, but last one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the use of tutoiement and roulement in the film. That's something that's definitely lost in the subtitling, but the rest of the film, or the entire film, there's two characters who voit each other using tutoiement, except at the very end, of course, when Eloise says tutoiement. And when I first saw this film, I gasped out loud because of that sudden shift. And so I wanted if you could speak to what informed that decision.
Yeah, there's two tutoiements. French language is so complicated. I mean, the other day I was talking to somebody here, an American woman, and an interviewer, and we were going you, and at some point she switches to French, and she went with vous, and I was like, oh, I thought we were closer than this. But really, I think part of us being preg or feeling like preg or really arrogant or whatever has a lot to do with this fact that, with this distance, I felt like, oh, and I was like, oh, that's French. It makes a distance. But, it gives this great contrast. And suddenly, like the fact that twice, so there's turnaround, but there's also ne dors pas, don't sleep. You're sharing this intimacy between them, and it kind of wrenches your heart. But the vouvoiement, I think, was also a convention of the time and a convention of fiction. It made it a little bit more formal, and it was one of the rare things that I enjoyed about it being set in the past, Especially writing this dialogue, it kind of gave me courage to also to stick to a very simple language, but that vous thing would give it this whole style, and also it's very sexy. Distant is sexy. It is.
It's a very sexy film. Again, thank you all very, very much for being here. Thank you, Céline.
Thank you.
Arclight. So the film comes out officially in Chicago February 21st. For all your friends who decided to stay home and be lame, make sure to tell them about it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.